A cold wind blew across Fort Branson as the sun slowly rose over the wide training grounds where hundreds of soldiers were already gathering. It was graduation week for the elite combat units, but today was not a ceremony. It was an assessment day, a final test designed to push every recruit to the edge of their physical and mental limits. Among the sea of uniforms stood a woman whose presence alone carried a silent intensity. Her name was Captain Arya Cole, a combat strategist known for an unwavering gaze that seemed to see through anyone who tried to size her up. To the soldiers at Fort Branson she was simply an instructor, strict but fair, brilliant but quiet. Only a very small circle knew her real identity. Before arriving at the base she had spent 8 years operating in the shadows with Task Force Black and 3 additional years executing impossible missions with the United States Army's most secretive unit. She was Delta Force, but at Fort Branson that detail was classified, sealed behind layers of clearance no one on this base possessed. For months she had trained groups of soldiers, keeping her identity hidden, teaching only what she was allowed, never revealing the depth of her experience. Yet her silence made some people uneasy. Some respected her, some feared her, and a few hated her. One man in particular had developed an unhealthy obsession with undermining her. Sergeant Mason Hale, a muscular, loud, ego-driven soldier who prided himself on being the toughest man in any room. He had been rejected twice from advanced special operations assessments. What angered him most was that a woman half his size had been placed in charge of training him and his company. At first he tried to embarrass her with jokes in front of the men, but she ignored them. Then he tried outperforming her in drills, only to be humbled again and again. His frustration grew until hatred filled every word he spoke about her. So when the commanding officer announced that today's evaluation would be supervised by Captain Arya herself with more than 300 soldiers watching, Mason saw his opportunity. The exercise was simple on paper. Each soldier had to pass through 5 stations: endurance, tactical observation, stress navigation, combat reaction, and unarmed defense. Most recruits feared the unarmed defense station because Captain Arya personally oversaw it. She always asked for a volunteer to challenge her. No one ever stepped forward. She always had to choose. But this time, before she could open her mouth, Mason stepped out from the ranks with a smirk that told everyone he had something planned. He cracked his knuckles loudly and walked into the center of the training circle as if he owned it. The other soldiers muttered in confusion. Everyone knew Mason was strong, but everyone also knew Captain Arya was on another level. Still, Mason was not thinking with strategy or reason. He was thinking with arrogance and resentment. Arya's eyes remained calm as she looked at him. She simply said, "Are you sure you want to volunteer?" Mason grinned broadly. "I've been waiting for this, ma'am." Everything inside the circle became quiet. The audience grew still. The tension was thick enough that you could feel the air tighten. Arya nodded and signaled for the drill officer to begin the test. Mason struck first, lunging aggressively with the confidence of a man certain he was going to win. His approach was predictable, wild, fueled by anger rather than skill. Arya didn't move until the very last second. Her foot slid a few inches, her body lowering smoothly. She redirected the strike with effortless precision. Mason stumbled but recovered, surprised that she barely seemed affected. The crowd whispered. Mason growled and attacked again, this time faster, using techniques that he had practiced for years. Arya deflected each one with graceful economy, moving like she was fighting in slow motion while he fought in desperation. Every failed strike added fuel to his rage. When he realized he could not beat her through technique, he resorted to brutality. He grabbed her shoulder with one hand, trying to yank her close so he could overpower her with raw strength. His grip tightened as he snarled something under his breath. What Arya heard was not just disrespect. She recognized intent to harm. Mason was no longer participating in training. This had become an attack. Her expression changed. Calmness melted into something colder. Her voice, quiet but sharp enough to cut through the entire field, echoed clearly. "Release me, Sergeant." Mason didn't listen. He tightened his grip and shoved her. That was the moment everything changed. Arya's posture shifted. For the first time in months she allowed a piece of her true identity to rise to the surface. With a steady tone, she said 5 words that froze the closest soldiers in place. "I'm Delta Force, Sergeant." Mason laughed, thinking she was bluffing. But the next second proved otherwise. Before he could react, she executed a lightning-fast counter-rotation, trapping his arm between her shoulder and chest. Her movement was surgical, efficient, and controlled. Mason's eyes widened in shock. And then the sound came. A clean, crisp snap echoed across the field like a branch breaking in winter. His arm broke instantly. 300 soldiers gasped at the same time. The commanding officer nearly dropped his clipboard. Mason fell to his knees, breathless, stunned, holding his shattered limb. Arya stepped back, her face calm again, her voice steady as she signaled the medics. "Get him to the infirmary. He won't be using that arm for a while." The medics rushed in, but no one else moved. Every soldier stood frozen, staring at her as though they had just witnessed something unreal. When Mason was taken away, the commanding officer approached her, half shocked and half impressed. "You said you're Delta Force," he whispered. Arya looked at him calmly. "I was. Not anymore. I'm just here to train your men." He nodded slowly, realizing he had just learned something he was never meant to know. But what happened next surprised even Arya. One by one the soldiers straightened their backs. Not out of fear, out of respect. They had seen arrogance punished, discipline defended, and skill at its purest form. They had watched a woman who had survived some of the most dangerous missions on Earth reveal only a fraction of her ability. And now they knew exactly who was training them. That moment changed the morale of the entire base. Rumors spread instantly. By lunchtime every soldier knew that their quiet instructor was a Delta Force operative who had shattered a man's arm like snapping a twig. But what they didn't expect was how Arya handled the aftermath. She never mentioned her past again. She never boasted. She never reminded anyone of what she did. Instead she returned to her routine, stricter than ever, yet strangely more respected than any instructor before her. Weeks passed. Rumors turned into legends. And then something unexpected happened. The Department of Defense sent a sealed letter requesting her presence for a classified briefing. A threat had emerged overseas. A unit was needed. Not just any unit. A team requiring the precision, discipline, and strategic intelligence only she could provide. At first she refused. Her job was training now. But then she looked at the soldiers she had been shaping. Men who once doubted her now pushed themselves harder than ever. Soldiers who once judged her now asked for her guidance. She realized that perhaps the world still needed her. Not in the shadows, but where her strength could save lives again. So she accepted the call. Before leaving she gathered the soldiers on the field where everything had happened weeks before. She told them that what mattered most was not strength, not size, not gender, but discipline and clarity of purpose. She told them that every soldier who stands with courage and integrity becomes a force stronger than any weapon. And then she walked away, boarding the helicopter that would take her back into the world she had left behind. As the helicopter lifted off the ground, the 300 soldiers who had watched her break a man's arm now saluted her with unwavering loyalty. They knew they had witnessed something rare. A true warrior. A legend in human form. And though she never sought praise or recognition, her actions spoke louder than any title. She was Delta Force. She always would be. And this time the world would remember her not because she broke a sergeant's arm, but because she stood for something bigger. Strength with discipline. Power with restraint. Honor without ego. Her next mission remained classified. Her future remained unknown. But every soldier at Fort Branson knew one thing. Wherever she went, danger would tremble before her. Because some people train to fight. Others are born for it. And Captain Arya Cole was both.